And in my interview with Mitt Romney, we covered a lot of other ground, including how he's preparing for those crucial debates with President Obama, what he thinks of new polls that have him falling behind, and whether he regrets those first comments he made after this week's violence in Egypt and Libya. Romney accused the Obama administration of showing, quote, sympathy for the protesters. The president said Romney was displaying a shoot first, aim later attitude, and that's where we began.
I thought the statement was inappropriate and pointed that out. But of course now our attention is focused on the loss of life and the tragedy of having a remarkable ambassador and diplomatic members have their lives taken.
You said the statement showed a tendency to sympathize with those who waged the attacks. Where do they show sympathy for those who waged the attacks? It was done before the attacks happened.
Well, the statement, as I indicated, stayed on the website for some 14, 15 hours. The statement was reiterated after they had breached the sovereignty of the embassy.
Coupled with a condemnation of the attacks, though.
And even after the killing in Libya. And by the way, what I said was exactly the same conclusion the White House reached, which was that the statement was inappropriate. That's why they backed away from it as well.
And no direct response then when the president says you shoot first and aim later?
Well, this is politics. I'm not going to worry about the campaign.
But as the campaign heads for the home stretch, Romney now facing criticism not just from President Obama, but conservative allies too, with some questioning why he's not doing better in this bad economy.
If the Republican Party cannot win in this environment, it has to get out of politics.
If you can't beat Barack Obama with this record, then shut down the party.
A new batch of polls highlights those concerns. Romney now trailing in swing states like Florida, Ohio, and Virginia. What do you say to the hand wringing?
Well, beating an incumbent is never easy. The president exudes an air of likability and friendliness, which is endearing. But at the same time, I think people recognize that he has not done the job they expected him to do and that he promised he would do.
But you're falling further behind. Why aren't you doing better?
Well, I'm doing well. We're virtually tied in the polls, some days up, some days down a point or two. We're doing well in swing states. The outcome is decided by the people in the middle. And I believe that as they look at who they believe can get this economy strong again and create jobs again and rising wages and take-home pay for middle-income families, they're going to say, I've got the best prospects for doing that, and I'll get their nod.
Let's talk about Iran. You've been quite critical of the president's policy. Also, Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel has suggested he wants more clear red lines from the United States. What is your red line with Iran?
Well, my red line is Iran may not have a nuclear weapon. Iran as a nuclear nation is unacceptable to the United States of America.
President Obama said exactly the same thing. He said it is unacceptable for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Yeah. So your red line is the same as his.
Yeah, and I laid out what I would do to keep Iran from reaching that red line. I said that crippling sanctions needed to be put in place immediately. That combined with standing up with Iranian dissidents. The president was silent. When dissidents took to the streets in Tehran, the president was silent. In addition, I think Ahmadinejad should have been indicted under the Genocide Convention for incitation to genocide.
But your red line going forward is the same.
Yes, and I recognize that when one says that it's unacceptable to the United States of America, that means what it says.
You mentioned President Obama's likability. We had a poll question this week asking who would you rather have dinner with? Right now, President Obama is beating you by about 19 points on that. So try and convince people that they're wrong. Bring us inside. What would dinner be like at the Romney home?
It would be chaotic. All right, you'd have grandkids climbing all over you. Probably some food would be thrown from one side of the table to the other by one of my grandkids. It'd be a lot of fun. I can't tell people who would have more fun at whose table, but I think the American people are looking for someone who has the capacity to help them get good jobs and more take-home pay, and I do.
Let's talk about the debates.
Hello, Golden!
What have you learned as you studied all this about President Obama as a debater? What are you looking for?
Well, I think he's going to say a lot of things that aren't accurate. And, I'd be tempted to go back to that wonderful line by Ronald Reagan, there you go again, but you can't use something that's
Bill Clinton used that about you the other day at the Democratic Convention.
As another president once said, there they go again.
I didn't happen to see that. But I think the challenge that I'll have in the debate is that the president tends to, how shall I say it, say things that aren't true. And in attacking his opponents. I've looked at prior debates, and in that kind of case, it's difficult to say, well, am I going to spend my time correcting things that aren't quite accurate, or am I going to spend my time talking about the things I want to talk about? And
So
that's
what do you
the challenge
do?
you always. Well, that's the challenge you always have, and that's a judgment you make.
Do you have any rituals that you'd use to get ready?
Well, Ann always gives me the advice as I get ready to go up on the stage and offers a few words of encouragement. And I look to her when I'm in the debate. I look and see her. Typically, her eyes are down. She is more nervous in the debates than I am. She says, "I wish I could debate instead." She said, "I wouldn't be as nervous." But I look to her, and when she's smiling and confident, that gives me the boost I need.
Governor Romney, thanks very much.
Thanks, George.
Big moment coming up on October 3rd. Lots more on all this week's politics coming up Sunday on This Week.